Hi, everyone. I'm Janis Whitlock, Senior Director of Knowledge and Advising at the JED Foundation. I'm delighted you could join us today for a discussion of Each and Every Day, a film that spotlights the urgency of talking about suicide and mental health. Each and Every Day features 9 young survivors who span racial, ethnic, socio-demographic, and religious backgrounds. Despite differences in where they started, each of them has a personal story to share about challenges with depression, anxiety, and other mental health concerns. Each and Every Day focuses on messages of hope and recovery, as well as on the importance of treatment and candid conversation. This is a documentary meant to facilitate thoughtful discussion. You can download the discussion guide by visiting jedfoundation.org/eachandeveryday, all one word. Joining me today are Sheila Nevins, executive producer at MTV Networks, Alexandra Shiva, an award-winning filmmaker, and Saniya Soni, a recent graduate from Drexel University and a JED student ambassador, and somebody whose story is featured in Each and Every Day. Before I turn it over to our panelists, I want to note that today is Mental Health Action Day. It is a day dedicated to moving conversation from mental health awareness to mental health action. This is a cause that MTV has spearheaded nationally. If you head to mtv.com, you can find many action-oriented mental health resources, as well as a link to the Each and Every Day documentary. Just one last note. We will have time at the end for Q&A from audience. So if you have any questions, and I hope you do, please feel free to type them into the questions box and we'll get to as many as we can. All right, so I'm ready to start, and I'll kick us off with the first question. This is for primarily Sheila and Alexandra. I want to know, how did this project come to be in the first place? What was your initial inspiration?
Sheila?
Well, I remember reading something about the statistics of young people who were taking their lives, and having a son at the time who was not in that group, but nonetheless was in a rehab. A lot of the people in this particular rehab were also suicide survivors. And somehow I remember the cafeteria, and I remember thinking, what am I doing? Why don't I make a show about these kids and try to do something about it? And so I went back to HBO, where I was at the time, and I tried for about 5 years to grab this and make it happen. And I found out about the JED Foundation, and I tried to work with them, and I just couldn't get it right. And then I moved to MTV, and I couldn't let go of the idea of doing something that young people could look at and find something of themselves and something that could help them. Not a miracle pill that you swallow, but kids like themselves. And I basically thought of Alexandra, because Alexandra as a producer was someone who could really touch young people, among other things that she can do. And I thought, I'm going to give this another try. New network, new place, still the same driving force of wanting to do this. And I'll try again. And so Alexandra taught me how. So I have to thank her for showing me the way to do it, especially during this awful time of COVID, when, you know, I had these ideas of kids in one room together, and, you know, I had all these far-fetched ideas that probably wouldn't have worked, and I kind of just gave it to Alexandra, and I believe that she made it work. It was certainly the best of the 5 previous attempts, so thank you, Alexandra. And I don't give out compliments easily.
Sheila. Well, Sheila brought it to me and said, I really want to make this and have it be hopeful and have it really focus on prevention and really speak to young people. And I was so excited to work with her, and we had worked together on a different film, but I was so excited to really try and create something that would be able to speak directly to young people and be able to, you know, as Sheila mentioned, like that hopefully everybody sees a little bit of themselves in different people that they're seeing, and that it's not, you know, no offense to the experts, but that it isn't just the experts speaking for these young people, that they're speaking for themselves and sharing their experience and really their strength and what they've overcome. So I found it to be an incredibly inspirational project. Loved working with Sheila and loved meeting all of the participants so much.
I'm kind of curious, how long did it take from the beginning to end?
You mean from the beginning of wanting to do it, or from the beginning of when Alex knew
Well,
what
I
she
know it said, yeah, 5 years maybe from the beginning of wanting to do it.
I think the want to was at least 6 or 7 years. And it was
And you called me. Oh,
because I had a relationship with the JED Foundation, and had actually received an award for someone who had lost their life, and just traumatized by not being able to do anything. And so at least 6 or 7 years of trying, and then landing in the right place. You know, how long did you take, Alexandra? It was a long one, right?
well, we talked about it for the first time, I think in August of 2019. And then we started working on it in November of 2019. And we had actually started filming and, you know, lined up sort of different shoots, and we were going to be traveling to this place. And all of a sudden, you know, COVID, the pandemic hit, and we couldn't do that. So we just, you know, we talked about, are we going to be able to do this? Is this something we have to pause? And I think we all felt really strongly that it was too important to do this right now, and that there was a way to do it in a COVID world, and that Zoom was going to make sense. And I felt the first time that everyone got together on Zoom, I couldn't believe the unbelievable strength in all of the participants, and then the lessons that they had to teach the rest of the world about how do you stay connected? You know, what do you do when you feel isolated? What does it mean to be a part of a community, and how important that is? So so we really took a very sharp left and made it work, which I was so happy we were able to do in this moment.
Well, the rest of us are great.
I mean, being in that Zoom room with the rest of the participants was something that I am so grateful for, because it was such a powerful experience. But I guess my question for the both of you is, how did the experience of creating this documentary, you know, affect you or your understanding or perception of mental health and well-being?
Can I go first? I mean, for me, it was a very interesting thing, which I had noticed in various rehabs and various other attempts, which is when you share you have many less inhibitions because you're not alone. And I know that intellectually, but I didn't really feel that until this film, which was that you all knew each other because you all knew a certain sorrow and a certain despair, and you were brothers and sisters almost, you know, in a very unusual way. I mean, who would ever think of intimacy on Zoom or closeness in that way? And yet, I felt like you'd known each other for a long time. Sort of like travelers, you know, you'd been to the same spot, you'd seen the same, I shouldn't say attractions, but you'd seen the same exhibits, so to speak, and you were able to share the experience. And it was really a learning experience of being with people who experience what you experience. And the loneliness everyone always feels sometimes in a crowd or with small talk. There was no small talk here. There was talk. And so I think it was, you know, really I learned a lot.
I did too, and I felt it was challenging. That just the mechanism of shooting remotely was challenging, but also trying to make sure that the messaging and making sure that we were really following reporting guidelines and how you talk about this in a way that would be helpful and not in any way triggering for people, that, you know, that it was something that was a really interesting challenge for us, and we took it very seriously. One of the things I learned that I didn't really ever know was how important it was to talk about. I knew it was important to talk about it, but that you can never put someone in harm's way by asking them directly how they're doing and if they're having thoughts of suicide, and if there's anything that they need if they need help with their mental health, that's not actually going to hurt someone. And that was really new to me. I think that this generation is just unbelievably brave and more open about mental health and talking openly, and it was just very, very inspiring.
Did you find that it's changed the way things have the conversations you've had since?
I have.
Yeah. Yes. Interestingly enough, getting right to it.
Yeah.
Right to it. And the whole idea of I've been there. Tell me yours. I think I've always talked too much, but I'm very good at talking around. I think I learned from this film to talk to and about, and it was a very interesting learning experience because I'm very good at cover up. So even though I was not one of the students sitting there, and even though I was pretty much an onlooker in the process, I have to say it was a learning experience for me. I learned a lot about, and the thing about Harm's Way was also interesting. A lot of the reasons there were cancellations of the other shows before they even really got started was we felt there was too much ideation in it, meaning there was too much in it that was attractive. Like nobody cared about me, and then, or nobody cared about Joe, and then suddenly when Joe did that, everybody cared about him and they planted a garden in his honor or, named the library after him. That ideation had to go. The glamorization had to go. And the idea of repair and honesty had to enter in its place. That was a really, really tough lesson because when you think about it, you think about things like, oh, hey, sorry, we lost you. When you think about it, you think about the drama of it, and you have to remove yourself from the drama. I remember someone once pitched me a film about people on a bridge, I think it was the Golden Gate Bridge, and it was so dramatic, and I had to pull away from it at some point because I realized it was encouraging in a strange way, because nobody became somebody from this terrible leap, and I had to hold myself back because after all, I go after audiences, but you realized, and I think Alexandra put it best, which is you have to maneuver interest without putting people in harm's way.
Yeah, so that brings us to a really important question, which was, what was it like for you to work with a youth cast? And it wasn't just any youth cast, it was a youth cast with a rainbow of experience that you were trying to be really sensitive about. Is that new for you?
I'm not sure I understand the question exactly.
Oh, just what was it like for you to work with the youth, and especially youth with this kind of...
Alexandra. That belongs to Alexandra. I really must say this is her film. It was my daydream and her film. So, go ahead, Alexandra.
Oh, we're not taking enough credit. Sheila, you're not taking enough credit. We did it together.
I do that a lot. I don't
do that.
Exactly. When I do that.
I had definitely, this was not my first experience working with young people on camera, and then also working with young people with sensitive subject matter. I made a film with Sheila about young people on the autism spectrum and going to a prom, and there were a lot of, it's a lot of navigation in terms of just making sure that you're sensitive to what someone, that you listen, that you're sensitive to what they have to say, that you develop a relationship. We had an incredible team on this film, Lindsay McGrew, the producer, and just incredible people who were able to support the process and talk to all the participants. And so I felt very lucky, and it was not, it was challenging only because it is a different subject matter for sure, and I think we really wanted to be careful about the reporting and how we were doing that, and what Sheila was saying earlier, there's a inherently, you want to take the drama down, so you want to sort of like, you want to meet someone where they are, but you don't really want to be showing the most dramatic version of what someone's talking about, because that's not going to be helpful either. So that was interesting and a challenge.
Awesome. Were there highlights or hard points in particular that you're comfortable sharing, and no pressure to share if you can't think of one or it's not comfortable?
No, I think taking over people's iPhones and then trying to do B-roll with their iPhones was particularly challenging. It's like, okay, can you move the camera this way? And then can you move the camera that way? Sonia, you did a great job. She would set up the camera in great locations do her mask, do her yoga. It was fantastic, but that was challenging, and trying to figure. We had a few misses on audio. We had to figure, you know, there were some technical challenges that we really had to figure out that were sort of funny.
It was definitely an experience to film in this way, where, you know, you guys sent me a box of, you know, cameras and equipment, and I had to set it up, and you're talking me through it, and I'm like, I've never done this before. But I mean, that brings me to that next question that I feel like a lot of people are wondering: how do you make a documentary during a pandemic? What was that like? What were the unexpected benefits of doing it this way?
You know, I'll tell you something about one of the benefits. I have always felt that as the cameras got smaller and smaller, the intimacy between the shooter or the shooters, the producers, and the you know, the person whose story it was getting better and better as the cameras got smaller. It never occurred to me that you could not be there at all. The intimacy that you were able to get on this was an absence of your presence, of your very presence. I mean, I don't mean to insult any cameraman, but I must say that in my heart of hearts, I thought to myself, holy moly, these kids are shooting themselves essentially, and they are able to invest personally in a piece of equipment because they've brought up with machinery and with technology, and that this notion of, you know, go closer, go further, can be done remotely. And it was like, whoa, what world is I entered? Because they're talking about the most intimate things, the most climactic moments in their lives, and there's no one there filming it. They're filming themselves. It's really extraordinary. I mean, and someone's listening 3,000 miles away possibly, so it's, you know, whew.
It was wild. It was definitely a wild experience.
Well, but it,
and also I love the intimacy,
which
I think, sorry,
loneliness and that the technology, which seems to distance you, and I'm not always a fan of, can create intimacy in some way if used correctly, and that maybe there's a whole industry of sort of intimate conversations in some way with nobody there. You know, you don't need this other thing. It made me think a lot about caretaking and loneliness and nursing homes and, you know, just things that could be intimate without the crew being present. And I learned all that from Alexandra.
By the way, love
one of my become obsolete thanks to you, Alexandra.
No, there's nothing, but I have to say there's something about, you know, the iPhone, it has its limits. It does bring a lot of intimacy, but it does have its limits. So, you know, we're not going to totally just move to iPhones completely. I hope not. But I think that also, but people zooming in and having their own surroundings, be present to each other while they're talking, I think that was really, it's where we are right now, but I think it was good for that space and good for that those conversations in a really interesting way too.
Those rooms, I would have moved the furniture, and I would have, you know, pulled the shade. I would have done all kinds of things that would have discomforted on some level the star. You know, it just would have. I just grew up that way. You know, that's how I grew up.
This was the most natural of natural settings, I guess, that you could have gotten in the way that you ended up doing it.
Yeah, it was your place where you were comfortable. You know, and nobody was fixing and moving the TV and moving this and moving that. Lesson.
Having been there during those group conversations, or at least some of them, the ones I was there for, I was amazed at how smoothly they flowed and how quickly people were able to enter into the conversation. That was really remarkable. And I do wonder if it's about the comfort of being in your own space.
Interesting. It's very interesting. I don't know.
So what were some of the misconceptions about youth mental health that you went into, or that you think viewers went into this with, and what were you hoping to address?
I think, I don't know, I'm not sure if it's a misconceptions, and more just things that were revealed. in the process, which is that that inequity and racism plays a huge part in mental health and in trauma. And I think that was really important, that, that being an immigrant and coming from a different culture, and then how that plays a role. I thought that was very important, that, we learned through everyone's different stories, through many people's different stories. And the biggest misconception I had really was that young people weren't talking about it. And I think that's not true. I think that young people are talking about it more than any other generation, which is very exciting.
I think that's really true. Saniya, is that your experience, that people are talking about mental health?
Absolutely. I think it's changed. I have seen it change over time in my generation, in my communities, in my peer groups, where when I went through what I share in the film and my experience with, suicidal ideation and my attempt and my, my story, when I started to share my experience, I thought I was the only one, because that's what tends to happen when you experience a mental illness that is like depression, where you tend to think that you're alone, especially if you have never heard anyone else share these types of things. And as time went on, as I shared more, I think it goes back to, Sheila and Alexandra, what you were saying about the power of sharing your story and seeing other people that look like you, who have gone through the same experiences. I came across more and more people my age who had also gone through it. And then it became this network of young people sharing their stories and struggles and how they were getting help and what wasn't working and what was working. And now we're in a space where I think, at least in our generation, mental health is no longer stigmatized. And we're getting to a point now where the whole point of today is it's Mental Health Action Day, right? I think we've gotten to a point where we've gotten all the awareness we can get. Now it's about, how can I address those problems that I'm going through? How can I get help? How can I give help? How do I make sure that the people around me feel supported, and that if I'm ever going through something, I know who I can turn to?
It's really excellent. Yeah, I have to agree. I really feel like your generation is the best position of all generations that I've been alive for or have studied to tackle these harder issues. You're probably the most mental health and psychologically literate that way. I have faith.
Which makes me excited to see what future generations are going to be able to do.
Right. So I just want to we have a couple more questions on our end, but I want to just take a pause and encourage viewers to start sending in questions if you have them, because we've made plenty of space for you to do that. And as they come in, we'll take some. Saniya, do you want to take this next one?
Yeah. Alexandra, Sheila, what do you hope viewers take away when they watch each and every day?
That there are other people like themselves, regardless of how they look, how different or the same they look to themselves. And also that we're not promising you that the sun will come out tomorrow. We're telling you in the least direct way possible, but the most important way possible, just that the word hope, that tomorrow will be better. And that without a tomorrow, there's no hope. So consequently, hang in there, as opposed to the sun will come out tomorrow. I mean, I like the song, but I don't believe a word of it. I don't believe in silver linings or there's something at the end of the rainbow. But I think that if you hang on, you have a shot at happiness, some happiness, not every day of your life, but somewhere. And I think I think that this show achieved that, because we weren't promising you a rose garden. We were just promising you that you could plant and water and watch something grow, but not necessarily that you're going to wake up in the morning and it's all going to be fine again. So that's what I hoped. I hoped it was a realistic approach to tomorrow, and the information that today it's raining, but there is tomorrow. But just because the sun comes out doesn't mean you're going to find a pot of gold for your future. I think
I appreciate you saying that so much, because I think one of the things that I struggled with during my journey was hearing people tell me, oh, it's all going to be okay, and never believing that, because I knew that they didn't know whether that was going to be the case. And to see, and like to have that expectation that, oh, things will get better. And the expectation that when you share your story, you only share the acceptable or the digestible parts or the pretty. And I think what I really, really appreciate about the conversations I was able to have, and the conversations, you know, the rest of the members were able to have, was there wasn't an expectation that we were 100% okay, that we were still going on our own journeys, that we were still growing, but that there is hope and there is help out there.
Excellent. Before we turn to viewer questions, and we do have some, I'm wondering, Alexandra, if you want to tell us what you hope viewers take away.
I mean, I think that what Saniya said and what Sheila said are, you know, exactly what I was hoping, and also that people see that there are lots of different options for help seeking. There are lots and lots and lots of different things you can do. There's so many different ways people feel that they're not alone, you know, to echo what Sheila said, but, you know, that really there are lots of people having lots of different feelings, and it's okay to talk about it. And there are as many different ways to get help as you could possibly think of. And we try to really list many, call them out in the text chats in all sorts of ways. But, you know, that the most important thing is talk to someone, or if you know someone who you think is in trouble, talk to them, ask them if they're in trouble.
That's great, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to some questions from our listeners. From a school counselor supporting middle school students, they ask, how do you envision your project being shown or used in a school context, especially for younger teens?
I think that the JED Foundation is going to make this available to schools, and it's certainly available from MTV and through MTV, but this is not a for-profit show. This is a to help you show, and it's out there for you to use in your classrooms with your students, for them to take it home. It's you know, and I think the other thing about it, which I was just thinking of, it doesn't endorse any one form of feeling better. From the psychopharmacology, there are groups, there are different kinds of therapy. The main thing is not to be alone, and to reach out. So I think Saniya said that, you know, and I think Alexandra would agree with that. It wasn't a drug company proposing a particular happiness drug. And it wasn't a particular kind of therapy. Different things help different people. And they tried a lot of things. And the other thing that was so interesting, I thought, was that people who looked slightly different from the typical white American wanted to talk to someone who looked like them. And that was available as well. Whether you were Asian, whether you were Black, whether you were Asian, you know, whatever you were, you could find someone that you felt comfortable facing, someone who looked familial. And I think it was interesting. It dared to say that, and the young people dared to say that as well. So it's out there. Anyways, it was out there.
I think the question from someone from a middle school guidance counselor?
Yeah, it says, well, younger teens.
Younger teens. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that JED, this just came up in my son's school recently. And so I think that JED was recommending that this was a 17 plus film, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the guidance counselors can't watch it, that the parents can't watch it and take from it what they think is appropriate for much younger teens. I would feel comfortable showing it to my 14-year-old. I think it depends on the teen. I think it depends on it really depends on who's watching it, but certainly the parents, the guidance counselors, the teachers can all watch it if it's for 13, 14, 15-year-old kids.
Yeah, so we, with AFSP, in concert with AFSP, we decided on 16. We recommend it for 16 or older, but I wouldn't not recommend it for younger audiences, but I would recommend previewing it first and then using the discussion guide, which is, again is at jedfoundation.org/each and every day. We have questions and different kinds of considerations, and just letting them know, let whoever in the room, whether it's because they're young or because they've had an experience that might be called up by watching this, just letting them know that they might have feelings come up, and that making sure that you make space both while the film is showing as well as after for any kind of conversation or debrief will be fine. I mean, it's not something either organization felt like should be never watched with younger teens, just watched ideally with support. All right, so second question is, can you tell us why you think filmmaking has such power to change and shift culture?
I mean, that's a Sheila question.
That's an Alexandra question.
No, the reason we watch documentaries is because of Sheila. So please.
I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I think you hope. I don't think you know. You hope that when you show kindness, it's rewarded better than mendacity. You hope that caring and generosity of spirit has more rewards than selfishness and guns. You hope, but you don't necessarily. Nobody writes back and says, I turned in my gun. I'm kind to my grandma. Nobody says. I mean, who knows? It's better to send good vibes out in the universe than evil ones. I guess that's the furthest I could go with it.
It has tremendous reach. I mean, I think that, the medium has reach. It has reach into people's computers, into their homes. That's part of why you have to be so careful with what people program and how they make something, because it can reach someone where they live. And so it has to be carefully calibrated for whoever the audience is. But it has enormous reach. And I think that, that message, and also the message of people speaking directly to their own age group around what is painful and what is difficult and what their strengths are and what their hopes and all of those important things that they've gone through in their lives directly to people is a very valuable tool.
Yeah. Saniya, do you have anything to add? I was thinking this is a good question for certainly people who've gone into the film industry or the movie making industry, but you as a consumer of media, as a young person, why do you think that filmmaking or films and images like this have so much power?
Yeah, I guess my answer revolves around the word representation. I think there is so much power in seeing someone who looks like you, seeing someone who looks like you and has gone through the same things, seeing someone who looks like you and is talking about things that you could never imagine talking about in your own home. One of the things I really appreciated about this film was that there were 9 of us, and each of us came from a different background. Each of us came from a different experience. And as someone who has grown up with a South Asian background and has not seen people in the media talk about mental health, people who've looked like me, and especially knowing that in the South Asian community, mental health is so far stigmatized and such a huge taboo, to know that that perspective was respected enough to be shared. I think young people want to see themselves in what they consume because it validates their experience. It reminds them of that core feeling that they are not alone, that thing that keeps people going. And media and storytelling and film has the power to do that.
All right, thank you so much. All right, we've got a lot of questions coming in, so I don't know if we'll get through everything, but we're going to give it our best shot. Is there anything you learned from the youth you interviewed that you were surprised about or that had a significant impact on you? Assuming this is for you, Sheila and Alexandra.
I think I touched on it a little bit earlier. It was very important to hear about the trauma of racism and inequality and how that contributed to mental health challenges and really exacerbated those issues for people. And it wasn't a total surprise, but I was so happy that people were so open about that challenge.
Sheila, did you want to add to that?
No, I think we pretty much covered that. I think that like to like was an unusual experience to watch. When you make a documentary, it's usually singular in terms of its focus, or there are a bunch of kids that have a similar socioeconomic background. This was very interesting to find the likeness of the struggle so universal, and it's just unusual in that way.
All right, here's a question that I don't think we've talked about, but it's a really interesting one, which is how did you choose the title? What does it mean?
Sheila?
Easily. I don't know. How did we finally land on it?
We went through a lot of them, and I feel like that was yours completely.
I don't know. I didn't want it to be The Sun Will Come Out, right? I didn't want it to be a film about suicide and depression. I wanted it to be take each day as it comes and don't judge tomorrow based on today. But I didn't know how to do that. So I guess we struggled. Marissa, everybody, we all just struggled with what it's hard. You have to take each day as a day. Well, that's not right. I don't know how it came up. I don't know. Maybe Solomon.
You really said each and every day, and then we liked it.
Yeah, I guess. I thought it was not pejorative. I think it wasn't promising something too much. It was just saying, get through this one, get through that one, and then there's another one. I didn't want to promise too much. And I didn't want to take away the truth of the show. The show was, as a matter of fact, the title came after the show pretty much. And the show gives you that title, which is Give Tomorrow a Chance. But that's too melodic and too, sounds almost spiritual. I didn't want to get too spiritual either. I don't know. Sort of a prosaic, good title, right?
It works. It flows well.
I liked it. But you should talk about the song, Alexandra. Getting the music for it. Oh my God.
I love the song.
This is Alexandra.
Should I go all the way back?
Yeah, go all the way back.
We had a great
things happening.
And we couldn't get the rights to it, but it was a cover. This incredible singer who did a cover of a song that we couldn't get the rights to. And then our editor, Toby Shimon, who is a genius, basically got the woman who had sang that cover, to do the song that's in there. And so the feeling, it had the same, because we were really tied to this one song we couldn't get the rights to for a long time. And it was really the singer and how she sang it that was so fantastic. And so it had a dynamic, hopeful, optimistic quality. So she sort of could sing any song that way. So we were very lucky to get the rights to the song that we had.
And we all right. It wasn't where somebody like this one and somebody like that one and somebody like that one. By the time we got to the song, that was it. We knew it. That was it. It was interesting.
But it was great. I mean, we were really happy.
That's so great. And we were talking a little earlier about
listen to the lyrics of it. It's the whole thing in the lyrics. Go ahead, go. Don't sing, just go.
Yeah, Indie is amazing, and it was so wonderful that she.
Alexandra, say the words of the song. The words of the song. Just two.
I am not the mistakes that I have made. I'm not the voices in my head. I'm not the mistakes that I have made. Hold on, I gotta look it up.
Perfect.
1 second.
Obviously, I don't remember it either.
I'm not the things my family did.
I'm not the things my family did. In DRE. Hold on.
Yeah, that
It's called
song,
I Am Late.
song just moved me to tears.
I love that song. So I Am Late, and it starts with I am light, and we sort of cut into it, but it's I'm not the things my family did. I am not the voices in my head. I am not the pieces of the brokenness inside. I am light. I am light. I'm not the mistakes that I have made or any of the things that have caused me pain. I am not the pieces of the dream I left behind. I'm light, and it keeps going. It gives me chills. It's so beautiful. It's the
Wow.
most perfect song.
Perfect.
You guys are making me want to hear it again. Is there a link or someplace we can hear it outside the documentary? Do you know?
Well, Ari is the singer, and you could hear it. She does it. It's a different rendition. But if you want to hear Olivia, who's the singer who sang it in the film, you got to watch the film.
Okay. All right. Thank you. It's beautiful. All right. So this is a question that's come up twice now, and I have a feeling it's going to be a little limited what you can say, but it shows up here, and that is a couple people have asked. Does the movie address those who are left behind when someone takes their life? And I know the answer to that is no, but it does make me wonder if you can talk about how you chose the particular focus that you chose.
You know, we talked sort of background with a lot of people who had survived, you know, the loss of a loved one and who were, you know, suffering from having lost a loved one. I feel like in some ways we used it as background, and so what we embedded are, like Gabi, who's in the film, says, you know, I didn't realize the places that you don't realize the places in people's lives that you hold. So there were ways in which we built it in and made sure that people touched on understanding how important, that they realized how important they were, and that the absence of them would be devastating to the people who love them. So, and I think, Saniya, you say it too, and your relationship with your mother and her being able to take care of you, and I have chills just thinking about it. So I think we were worried that if we started to talk to, it would broaden in a different way, and the focus was so to unify, as Sheila had said, to really unify through this experience and have people talk directly about their own experience in a way that was going to be as relatable as possible. And so it would have taken a sharp turn if we had people speaking about loss, but I think you can feel it in the stories, because you can put yourself in the place of the parents or of the siblings of someone who's speaking, and envision what they were going through or what they could have gone through.
You can always talk about what something isn't. You know, it isn't a lot of things, but it tried to do what it is about, which really, that moment when everything can go away and what you can do to avoid that moment and that sorrow and that depression and that anxiety, not forever or for all times, but that you can get away with it. Yeah, it's not about everything. You know, the best films are not about everything. There's a title, not about everything.
You'll have to do the next one. You have the sequel. Sonia,
That's true.
I'm going to ask you the question that I wanted to ask you, which is, what's it been like for you in the sort of before, during, and aftermath of all of this? What have you taken away?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I didn't, sorry, Janis, you were asking me, right?
Right.
Okay, just making sure. Yeah, I think when I had first, you know, heard about the project and had that first call, I had spoken about my story quite a bit. It was, you know, my experience was the reason I went to undergrad for a degree in psychology. It was why I was pursuing becoming a psychotherapist and pursuing counseling and all of those things, and all the work that I was doing with mental health advocacy. So that first initial call was kind of like, okay, yeah, I've done this. This is a very different, I guess, background to why I'm sharing my story.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when the actual, filming happened, I realized it was probably the first time I had shared my story as in depth as I had done since I had attempted, and since I had been hospitalized. And I realized that it was an interesting experience, for lack of better words. It was very heavy sharing all of that, and I didn't anticipate that as someone who has become so comfortable talking about my story. But I was very grateful for that experience because it reminded me that I'm not desensitized to what I had gone through, which I think for some time I thought that. But it also reminded me that I'm not just my suicide attempt. We didn't spend, it was a 2-hour conversation that we had, and it wasn't 2 hours on my suicide attempt. It was, part of it was on that. Part of it was on, what led up to that. Part of it was what was my experience within the psychiatric hospital I was in. And a lot of it was, where am I now, and how has that experience shaped my life? And how does it inform the decisions that I make moving forward? And I think after that, when the film premiered, I was talking to Gabi and Abraham and some other folks from the film, and I was kind of like, am I ready? Am I emotionally ready to watch this film as it airs? And I'm on the West Coast, and so I went to college on the East Coast, and so I had a couple friends there who were able to watch the movie before, or the film before I did, and they have reached out to me after it aired, and they were like, I've heard your story, but not in this way before. And my roommate's mom had watched it, and a couple of my other friends had watched it, and the love and appreciation and support they gave me right after seeing that was so heartwarming. And it reminded me, there's a reason I'm still here. My story matters. And I watched it after that. That was kind of the reason that I decided, no, yes, I will watch it live. And just seeing everyone's stories just made me feel so grateful for being able to be a part of a community that is so loving and caring and so committed to helping others, but also a reminder to myself that I did not think I would be here 6 years ago. This is the last place I thought I would be. And I can now look back and say, I made it. And I really hope that folks who are going through that space can take a moment to think, there is going to be a tomorrow in which I am not where I am today.
Wow, that's so awesome. Thank you. That is very interesting.
Great.
I think
when I feel badly, can I call you?
Absolutely, Sheila.
Anytime, different time between.
As long as I can borrow those chic glasses of yours.
I'm going to send them to you. Okay. I'm really embarrassed. They're a little too big, I think. Don't you think?
Oh no, I think they're
love them.
glamorous.
Oh, they're perfect. They're perfect.
Yeah.
And Saniya, you captured so well what I thought, you know, from the educational perspective and the scholarly perspective was so potent about this documentary, which is that it focused so much on the, you know, why do you stay? Why be here? What makes life worth living for you? And there were so many answers to that question that were so uplifting and inspiring. So thank you. All right, guys, let me just see. We have a few more questions here. There's a couple questions I'll just address quickly about it goes back to this question about who the intended audience and who to watch it with. So one person asks, as a parent of a teen, 15, what is the broad age range of your intended audience? And do you recommend young people watch with parents, peers, or mixed? And then someone else also asks, would you recommend watching this film with a friend or in a group setting as opposed to by yourself, to those who have struggled with mental health issues and suicide ideation? And if you don't mind, I'll start this off from the JED perspective. And that is this film, we recommend 16 and above. We have created a discussion guide that you can download at JED.com. Wait a minute, I think I'm wrong. JED.org. Ah, sorry. I'll come back to that in a second. Just momentarily.
JED.org / each and every day.
/ each and every day. And we do recommend, you can watch it with younger people. We really do recommend, though, that especially if you're younger, or if you have children who are a little younger, or you have had your own experience, we really recommend that you watch it either with people that you trust or in a group setting of some sort, and that you be prepared for the possibility that there'll be some hard feelings come up, and that you make space for that and are prepared to take care of yourself sort of before, during, and after. It's it can be a hard documentary to watch in some ways, but it's also very uplifting and inspiring. So it really does have a lot of things there that are healthy for everybody.
And to the second question, I would say, like, if you're someone who has struggled with mental health, with depression, with suicidal ideation, I would recommend watching it with someone. Again, there's power in numbers, there's power in support, and it is going to be a lot easier to process those feelings if you can watch it with someone you trust.
Yeah, and if you're not with someone right then please try to be with somebody soon after, or be prepared to feel feelings. All right, we have just a few more minutes, and I think one variation of a question that keeps coming up is, what's next, Sheila and Alexandra? Is there for both of you as documentary makers, and also if you were to do the next chapter of this, I'm not saying you will, but if you were, where would you go?
I hadn't thought of it. You want to pay for it? You want to send me the money?
Well, we can crowdfund it.
Partly what you learn in this is that anxiety, depression, and suicide thoughts are part of this. They may not be as serious as this film in terms of actual action or the willingness to take the next step, but that we're all in it together. Where certainly that anxiety and depression are they're just not part of our vernacular, and they should be part of our visual vernacular. I'm not talking about, I'm not sure how you do it or what you do, but I understand that it's out there. I'm not so exceptional. I feel those things, but it never occurred to me to watch or stream something that would be about that. So I think there's much more that media can do when it comes to this kind of life. Isn't easy, right? It's tough, right? Sad, right? It's happy, right? You're happy one day and then something terrible happens the next day. And then something good happens the day after that. And then it's all over, right? You might as well hold on to something. Might as well be an MTV docu done by Alexandra. Starring you, Saniya. And definitely with you, Janis. What do I know?
I don't know. I'm not sure what I would do on this subject next, but I do think that there's something to be done on, the the families and people who've lost a loved one. I think that would be really interesting. I also love the idea of following up with people 5-10 years later. I always think that's really interesting.
Like 7 Up, right?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite series ever.
I know. I haven't seen the most recent one, but I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great series. Are you guys working on anything right now, either of you, that you're willing to share?
Well, Sheila's working on a gazillion things.
Yeah, but when you ask me that question, I feel like I'm not working on anything, so I can't really answer. What am I working on that I don't know. I love this one the best. Is that fair to say? I'll tell you one thing about this one, and then I'll shut up. We go through a process at MTV, like 30 people tell you, you can't use that music cue, you can't do that, can't do that, can't do that. And so I guess it's necessary. And it was during the time of COVID, so you have to be protected and make sure everybody was protected. And then out of nowhere, someone I don't know said, "Thank you for this show." And then he went on to explain. He said, when I had a friend, you know this story, he said, I had a friend and I didn't know what he was asking, but he was asking for me to help him and I didn't respond properly. And I think this show will help a lot of people. It certainly taught me, maybe too late, but it taught me something. So I thought, oh my God, out of these 30 people, I think I told you about it out there, I don't know. But you never really know. If your heart is in something and you have the best of intentions, you just might make a difference. So hopefully this will.
That's great. And that actually dovetails really nicely with somebody suggests an idea for you, a documentary on how you navigate the complicated grief you go through when you lose someone you love to suicide.
Grief. I love grief. I love the idea.
There you go. You have it. You have the next idea.
I'm doing a project on grief right now, actually. It'll be interesting to see how that goes.
You're working on grief?
I'm doing a documentary that's sort of on grief, but not particularly on that kind of grief, but it's
But you can't just leave us like that.
I know. Thank you for saying that.
Something about maybe if you can't do that to me. I'll be up all night to call Saniya to find out what's going on.
No, this feeling for God. I'm doing a personal documentary about losing my mother to cancer when I was 10, and the sort of the long tail of grief, especially with early child loss. So I mean, early loss as a child. So.
Alexandra, I think you just said your title, The Long Tail of Grief. That is so perfect.
Sounds like an animal.
It does. Actually, right now we're thinking of calling it Outliving. We'll see.
Oh, that's good too. Oh, you have a lot of options. Well, I'm going to wrap this up because we're about there, but I want to thank you both, or all of you. Thank you all for joining us for today's panel conversation with Sheila, Nevins, Alexandra, Shiva, and Saniya Soni about the new documentary Each and Every Day. And just as a reminder, you can find the documentary at mtv.com and the discussion guide at jedfoundation.org/each and every day. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and evening wherever you are. And thank you again for joining us. And thank you all of our two filmmakers and Saniya for such a wonderful contribution to our society and our world.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Janis.
Yes, you're welcome. Bye, everyone.
Bye.